Hello and welcome to episode 9 of Stitched in Sweden. I'm Maria, your host, and you can find me on Ravelry and Instagram as mmonska. The show notes for this episode, as well as previous episodes, can be found on the blog, which is stitchedinsweden.blogspot.com. And I would love it if you would come over and join us on Ravelry. We have a group there called Stitched in Sweden. So this week I wanted to talk a little bit about what's been going on in Stockholm, some things I've been working on, one finished project, some upcoming plans for knitting and other crafts. I will give you guys a new question and also answer a question that has been asked a couple of times by watchers of the show. And then I have a technique tip for the end. So let's get started. First I wanted to say a big thank you to those of you who did respond this week in the Ravelry group and on YouTube in the comments for the question last week about knitting hats and what kind of needles you knit hats on. I think that I'm definitely going to need to try some shorter needle length circular, like 16-inch circular needles. As I was knitting this week, I was trying to pay attention a little bit more as to why it might be difficult for me to knit with 16-inch needles. And I know last week that I said that I knit with my needles pointing directly at each other, but I actually do have a bit of an angle for some reason. It just isn't the right angle for that tight circumference. But anyway, so it was really fun to hear from you guys this week, and to everyone else who contacted me on Ravelry and Instagram. It's always great to hear from you. So I also wanted to say a huge thank you to Circe. She is a designer on Ravelry, and she has designed the 1616 cable hat, and you've probably seen it. I just looked this morning and there was 2,000 projects, but this is a cable hat that's kind of slouchy. It can be slouchy or a bit tighter, and she contacted me, I think it was 2 weeks ago, after I asked about good hats for curly hair. And she sent me her pattern. She sent me one of her other patterns as well, so I am just really excited to knit one of those up and give it a try with curly hair. I'll let you guys know how that goes. So yes, this week in Stockholm, I actually, right after I stopped recording last week, I got the mail in the door and I had a package notification, so I walked down to the post office and I had received my order from the Wool Barn. So I ordered this, I ordered some lovely yarn, I'll show you that in a minute, but it came in this beautiful little bag. It's a little wrinkly because I've been using it, stuffing it in my purse, but it's a really cute little printed bag, perfect for a sock or beginning of a shawl project. And the lovely yarn that I ordered from her, this is her merino singles base, and it's in the colorway Purple Dream. It's a single pipe fingering weight, and it's 100% merino. So I am really excited about this. Originally I was planning on knitting my first shawl design pattern in this yarn, but you'll see I knit it in something else, and I am already really excited for the next design that I have in my head right now, which I think this will be just perfect for. So I will probably wind this up and cast on later today after recording. But this is, again, from the Wool Barn. She's on Etsy. And she just has she has lovely colors. There are a lot of soft colors, neutrals, nice grays, but also she does a lot of speckled yarns, and yeah, you've probably seen her yarn before in other podcasts, but it's just really pretty. And she also sent me these adorable little heart buttons. They're these little wooden buttons, and I think these would just be so cute on a little baby cardigan. Yeah, probably a little baby cardigan. But they could be cute on other things too. So, so that's the yarn that I got this week, which actually came kind of last week, but so this week was the first day of spring and we had snow. After having 2 lovely weeks of mostly sunshine, the weather has decided to turn back to snow and rain and clouds. So we got about, I don't know, this much snow, and it has been cold and rainy and snowy ever since, sort of. Not too bad, but it sort of slowed down my desire to knit on my lace top, and I'm just wondering, well, it's kind of good because it makes me want to knit more, keep knitting really warm, cozy things, but at the same time, I had sort of already transitioned in my mind to wanting to knit spring and summer things, and so I had all these thoughts about, okay, what am I going to knit next, what am I going to design, and that kind of thing, and they were all sort of lacy and lightweight. And so my project plans in my head, all the things that I'm knitting in my head, have been mostly those lighter weight things, and then suddenly the weather is cold and rainy again. And I'm kind of now feeling a little bit stuck with what I want to knit. I don't know if that ever happens to you, but sometimes I get all this motivation and I'm really excited looking at projects and patterns and things like that, and then it's almost like just overload sometimes, or just can't decide what I want to knit, or the weather changes and then my plans are kind of I don't know. Of course, if you knit summer things when in the spring when it's still cold, then they'll be ready in the summer when you want to wear them. But anyway, so yeah, that's pretty much, there hasn't been much going on this week. I have been working a bit, and sometimes that means that I get to knit, because if the children who I'm watching are asleep, then I get to sit and knit. So I have definitely been doing a bit of that this week, but it's also a lot of time on the train, and of course, time with the kids. So I have been working on my summer top, even though, I don't know, I said that maybe I didn't get as much done on it as I thought I might. Most of this progress has happened in the last 2 days, I would say. So here is what I have so far. You can see through it. It's a nice and light, flowy fabric here, and I think it's going to be really lovely once it's blocked. I showed you last week that I had knit a swatch in this yarn, and you could see that it's not quite as see-through in the stockinette section after it's blocked, because the yarn does bloom a bit. So last week when I showed you guys this, I put a marker. I was right here, so you can see I did do quite a bit, and I've just been doing some very simple waist shaping along here in 2 spots. This is going to be the front, and it's, you know, almost to the point where the underarms are going to be, and at that point I'm going to start the lace section, which will be in the top part here. And I'm planning on making this into a V-neck top, but it won't really have sleeves, but there'll be a little bit of sleeves, probably to here or so, because I will just knit the top lace panel, and I'm not planning on adding any more sleeves or sleeve shaping to it, but we'll see how that goes. I'm knitting that in Magazine Duet Super Soft, which is, I think it's a lace weight. The more I look at it and the more I knit with it, the more it really just feels like lace weight, even though I think it's categorized as fingering. I think it's probably because it does bloom a bit once it is washed, but it feels like lace weight. I'm enjoying knitting that. It's a really easy thing to knit when I'm watching a TV show or something like that, and if I just need a break. So, yeah. I really love the color of that too. I think it will be a nice bright color for summer and spring, if spring ever warms up again. Anyway, this week I have also been working on my sock design. Well, I've been working on the socks for my new sock pattern, which will be coming out within the week. This will be a free pattern on Ravelry, and I'll just show you because it's in a project bag that I don't think I have shown you before. This is a bag that it's just a simple drawstring bag that I made maybe last summer or the summer before, probably 2 summers ago. And it has bicycles on the inside. I've just folded it over. And then on the outside are these little vines, kind of, and the big dots. I just have a ribbon in here for the drawstring, but I prefer when it has a fabric or more of a, almost like a cord or something. Anyway, that's what I had, so. So in here are my socks, and I have just about finished one of them, and I'm very close to finishing the second one. I'll show you what I mean about just about to finish it, because I want to show you how I'm going to finish it. So yeah, I'll show you what it looks like. They haven't been blocked or anything or washed, but here's the front of the sock. It just looks a little wonky because obviously it hasn't been blocked. But I used a Fish Lips Kiss heel for this sock, and you can see these simple pearl bumps for the arrow pattern. And these socks are called Flying North. And like I said, this will be a free pattern on Ravelry that will be released within the week. I just need to get these finished up, take some pictures of them, and upload my pattern. So I wanted to say thank you to my test knitters who gave me some great feedback on these, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys think. It's obviously a very simple sock. You can see that, but this pattern just will give you the chart for it, and it's really easy to figure out. If you've never knit it from a chart before, you'll definitely be able to figure it out easily. It's very simple. It does not provide any heel pattern. I provide links to or information about the Fish Lips Kiss heel, which is what I used. You can also easily use an afterthought heel or a short row heel of your choice. These socks are knit from the toe up, and I used the Turkish cast-on method, which is a really easy way to do a toe up cast-on, I find. You just need to use two circular needles, and you basically wrap the yarn around the needles and then just pull out one of them and start knitting. If you've done magic loop before, it's a similar idea to that, and it's really simple. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to do that. You could pick whatever toe you want to do. I just basically am providing this pattern as a sort of template for how to knit this sock pattern. You can increase your toe to however many stitches you want. I did a bit of a pointy toe. If you don't want a pointy toe, do whatever toe you want to do. If you don't want to knit them from the toe up, if you'd rather knit them top down, that is also totally fine. The reason I knit these from the toe up is because I wanted to choose where I started my arrow, and I could start directly when I finished the toe, which is where I wanted it to be, if I did them toe up. If you do them top down, you're not going to know exactly how long your foot's going to be, so you're just probably going to have to stop the arrows at some point, which might not be exactly where you want it to be. But if you rather knit the socks top down, then that's fine. What else about these? I knit these out of the yarn that I showed you last week or the week before, which I bought at my local yarn store. It's 2-ply wool yarn from Sweden. And one thing I wanted to say about this was when I bought it, it was very sheepy, and there was still a bit of lanolin in it. And before I was knitting with it, I had it sitting on my desk for a couple days, and I noticed that I was really smelling the sheep smell from it. And I like that smell, but it was also making me sneeze a little bit. So I figured, I'm just going to throw this yarn in a bath and see if I get some more lanolin out of it. And that worked really well. I like washing my yarn sometimes before I use it, because a lot of times there is still stuff in there. Even if it's not a hand-dyed yarn, even if there's not dye that might be coming out, sometimes there's oil from the spinning machine that spun it. And I think it's nice to knit with clean yarn. If you're going to have this yarn in your hands all the time while you're knitting it, and you're going to have it, like squishing up next to your face, maybe smelling it, or I don't know, I smell my yarn. But you know what I mean, is like, usually you don't wash yarn until the end, after you've finished your project. And sometimes when you wash a project, the water can be like yellow and murky, and sometimes when that happens, I'm kind of like, ugh, I've just been knitting with that this whole time. It's on my hands, it's on my needles probably. So it's not like that yarn is really dirty necessarily, but sometimes I just think, why not give it a little bath beforehand? So I showed you the first sock here, mostly done. Second sock is here. I just have a couple more arrows on the top and then the cuff. And the reason why this is called Flying North is because it's sort of based off of the Flying Geese pattern, which is a traditional or typical, I guess, I don't know, classic sewing pattern for quilts, where you have the triangles that are all in a row. And I just like the simple detail of the purl stitch. They go really fast because each time you're just adding a purl stitch into this V. And so every row it's like, oh, I'm almost done, almost done, almost done. Oh, new V. And so, yeah. They were a lot of fun and continue to be fun to knit. So look for that pattern soon. Alright, so this week I do have one finished object, which I am quite pleased with and excited to show you. This is the design that I have been working on recently, and I didn't think that I was going to have this finished this week. I was knitting like crazy in the beginning of the week on this shawl, and I've probably knit the yarn in this shawl the equivalent of 2 to 3 times. Not the entire, I haven't ripped out the entire shawl and knit it 3 times, but I've ripped out parts of it and re-knit it so many times that I bet if you counted the total yardage that I knit for this shawl, it would be at least twice, if not triple, the actual yardage for the shawl. And that's just because even though I had written out the pattern before I started knitting it, I of course made adjustments as I went when things weren't coming out exactly how I wanted them, or I just had an idea like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I did whatever, fill in the blank. So, without further ado, here is my shawl. And this is the Swedish Spring shawl. And I knit this out of Knit Picks Stroll in the Dove Heather colorway. And you can see that I blocked it pretty strong, so it's quite airy. I knit this on a US size 5 needle, which I think is a 3.75, not sure, but that will be in the pattern. All of my patterns are written with both like inches and US sizes for needles and things like that, and also centimeters and millimeters size for needles, so you don't have to worry about that, doing the conversions as you're knitting. But yes, I'm really happy with how this came out. The reason why it's called Swedish Spring is because it's not necessarily warm yet here in Sweden for the spring, so you still need this kind of warmth around your neck. So of course any shawl is going to add warmth around your neck, but particularly I like to have this more solid, not solid, but you know, I like to have a stockinette section in the top part of the shawl, and then this lacy part on the lower edge of the shawl gives you still some warmth without being too hot. So I'm still wearing my wool winter jacket most of the time, actually all the time when I'm outside. And when I get on the train, especially now, it can be quite hot because they still have the heat on in the trains, but it's starting to get warmer sometimes. So anyway, so that you don't feel like you're suffocating and too hot, they have this nice airy, lacy part down here at the bottom, so when my coat is over it, I have this warm, cozy part for the wind and the cold, and then this lighter weight part is underneath my coat usually. I also was wearing this morning. I had wet hair and was just feeling a little bit chilled because, again, it's cold outside and it's windy, and when it's windy it's cold in our apartment. So I was feeling a little chilled, and I put this on and instantly just felt so much warmer, and it was just, I don't know, shawls just do that, I think. It's sometimes you don't even need to have a sweater on, it just can be like the perfect little lightweight layer for inside, or outside obviously, but it can just be a nice little addition of warmth. So I'm really pleased with how it came out. I really love eyelets, and I also love the detail that purl stitches provide. And so in this main body section here, you can see this kind of interesting stitch texture, which creates these sort of little bubbles. And then I think of these little bumps, which are also sort of an eyelet. It's hard to see because of my striped shirt too, but you get a little hole next to the bump, because it's not just a purl. And I think of them as like little buds, which also makes me think of spring. So anyway, I'm really happy with how this came out. It's really nice and drapey and warm and soft, and I have some test knitters who are working on it right now, So they have already given me some great advice and tips or feedback on the pattern. So I think that this pattern will probably be available in 2 to 3 weeks or so. It's all written up, but of course I'm making adjustments now and waiting on the test knitters to see how it comes out for them, and then it will be available in Ravelry. So yeah, that was definitely a major part of my knitting time this week, was working on that. As you can imagine, well, when you're knitting anything that you really love, you want to spend a lot of time on it. But this, especially since I was designing it, it was just like all of my focus and energy was going into this. Just to get the details to flow from one thing to another. You can see, like in this upper section here, these little bumps go down into points as well, which flow into these arrowheads. Obviously the arrowheads flow into the border. Anyway, it was just a lot of fun, and I am excited for the next one. So, yeah. Other things that I have upcoming is that I would love to I would love to sew a bento bag. I saw Kemper talking about, and I think she showed her a bento bag that she made, which is basically like, the outside is like this, and then it has like points that cross. It's hard to explain, but you've probably seen them. The Fiber Company Fringe Supply Co. has some beautiful bento bags, and I have some really nice fabric that I think would make a nice project bag. So I think they're really simple to make. I have looked up some tutorials on Pinterest, and I'm planning on stitching one up, hand stitching one this week. And I just pulled out a couple fabrics that I have possibilities. I have these arrow fabrics for my sister, which I love, and I've been kind of waiting for the perfect project. I also have this adorable sheep fabric, which is a little bit heavier weight canvas, which I think would make a nice bag as well. And I have these paper clips, which they're just cute, and they come from Fancy Tiger Crafts in Denver, which is a yarn and craft store that I like a lot. So I'm definitely planning on sewing up one of those. It might not be this week, but we'll just see how things go. And that reminds me, if you are interested in following me on Pinterest, I do post some knitting related things, stitch patterns, and just things that I'm inspired by. So sometimes that's photography or yarn or projects, patterns, and I also post some non-knitting related things. So if you're interested in following me on Pinterest, you can find me there as knitpearl15, and that's the number 15. So yes, that is what I have for upcoming, besides casting this on as soon as possible. So for this week's question and answer section, my question for you guys is, have you ever knit with Shetland yarn? And if so, how did you find it? Was it itchy? Was it soft? Was it nice to work with? Did you knit lace weight or 4-ply, 2-ply? What was it? And if you have knit with Shetland before, and if you've knit with more than one brand of Shetland, what did you like the best? If you haven't and you just enjoyed what you did knit with, let me know what that is. I am really inspired by Shetland lace designs, and I think I've been hesitant to try Shetland yarn itself because I remember when I was just starting out as a knitter and I was interested in only the softest brightest colored merino, nylon, superwash sock yarns that I think that's the only time that I have picked up Shetland, like picked up a ball of it and felt it, and I felt that it was very scratchy. But since then I have knit so many different kinds of yarn, and I think I've really broadened my horizons in terms of what I think of is as scratchy or not, because now I can wear pretty rustic yarns on my skin. And I think that that's something which is that you can sort of train yourself almost, because I remember that as a kid and growing up and things, I was really sensitive to wool and everything itched me. But now, as I've had more exposure to wool and different types of fibers, I don't find them itchy. Of course, some things still are itchy, but I'm definitely less sensitive. So, with that said, I would love to know your opinion on Shetland yarn and fiber. And then for the question that I'm answering this week, I have received several private messages on Ravelry from different people who have asked me about my curly hair. And so I thought I have responded to people individually, but I thought that I would also just show you guys what I use, because it's hard to be a curly haired girl sometimes, and I know that it has taken me a long time to figure out what products work for me, and so I'll just give you guys a quick peek at what I use. I've been using this Desert Essence coconut shampoo and conditioner. I also have the lemon conditioner from them, but I don't like it as much. I like the coconut one better. This one is specifically for dry hair, so it's really a moisturizing shampoo and conditioner, but I switch my shampoo and conditioner quite often. A lot of times I'll only use one bottle of a certain type, and then I'll pick something else out. But I usually try to find something that's for dry hair. And then in terms of what product I use just this one, which is Curls Rock Curl Amplifier. And it's kind of like a sticky cream, but not too sticky. But it's white. Okay, I can squeeze out a little bit maybe, but you can see it looks like lotion. And it kind of has just a slightly stickier consistency than lotion. Basically what I do is, after I take a shower or I wet my hair, even if I don't wash my hair, I always wet it. Also just to like add moisture to my hair. And then I brush it with a wide tooth comb, and I kind of like take sections of it and curl it around my finger and kind of scrunch it up. And then with my towel I scrunch it. And then I take this Curls Amplifier and I just take one squirt or half a squirt, rub it in my hands, and just really crunch it up in there. And then I really try not to touch my hair at all before it dries completely. And that doesn't always happen, but I find that it stays better, and then once it's totally dry, you can decide, if you want to fluff it up a little bit more or pull apart the curls a little bit. But when it's still drying, if you touch it too much, for my hair anyway, even though I have very curly hair, if I touch it too much, my curls could kind of pull out a little bit and fall down. Whereas if I let it dry all the way, they'll stay nice and tight, curled up. And I was thinking about this, and it's kind of the same thing when I'm blocking something that I've knit. If I leave something and I don't touch it until it's totally dry, I find that a lot of times it has more spring. It springs back, especially if it's superwash, because superwash doesn't like to spring back. But if you let it dry all the way without touching it, it will likely hold a better shape. Even if when you first pull it out of the water, you think, this seems to have grown a lot, or it's really stretched out. I'm always really careful to hold completely every part of, like, if this just came out of the water and it's blocking bath, then I would really make sure I was holding every part of it while I squeezed it out, never wringing it, just squeezing, and then laid it out to block and dry. Because if you let it hang, it's pulling in a weird place, and yeah. Anyway, if you just leave it till it's totally dry, just like your hair, I think you get a better result in the end. Anyway, that's not knitting related, but several of you have asked, and I imagine there are maybe some of you who haven't asked. So, if you're interested, there it is. And, okay, so the last thing I wanted to talk about this week was a little technique that I learned a couple weeks ago, actually. And this is from Ysolda, and she does a technique Thursday, I believe it is, and she doesn't post every Thursday, but oftentimes she has posts about techniques. And one thing that she was talking about, or one thing that she's posted about, is how to avoid those little, she calls them ears. Danny from Little Bobbins was talking about this too. With a toe, sometimes you get this weird little stitch blip from where you cast on, like where you made your slip stitch or something in the beginning. So I wanted to show you with this sock that I haven't quite finished off. You can see that my loop is still here. And this was my last stitch that was sitting on my needle, and I've just pulled it up a bit. And I snipped the yarn. And usually what I would do is I would then stick my fingers through this loop and pull the yarn all the way through the loop and then pull it tight. And I would take a needle and stitch in the end. But that actually adds an additional stitch. So what Ysolda suggests, and what has been working well for me as well, is when you have this loop, instead of reaching down and picking up your yarn to pull it through, just pull the yarn through. And that doesn't give you an extra stitch. Now you can sew in that end, and it will be more even with your other row of stitches, with your other side. The same kind of idea is true for if you're starting a toe, if you're starting a sock from the toe up, or if you're using the long tail cast on for anything. You know how a lot of times if you start the long tail cast on, you begin with a slip knot, stick that on, start casting on? Well, that slip knot, having that knot there, can be what makes that stitch stick out and create that little weird blip. You don't need a slip knot to start the long tail cast on, which I've never thought about that, but she did a post on that. So I haven't tried it yet, but I am definitely going to give it a shot this next time I cast on. And speaking about casting on, I just wanted to say this really quick. This will be in my pattern for this shawl. But one thing for starting shawls is that sometimes I delay starting a shawl because of the cast on. If you're doing a top-down shawl, a lot of times you start with a garter tab cast on, or something like that, so that you can get this nice top edge of garter stitch. I find the garter tab cast on really fiddly, especially if you only have 5 stitches that you need to cast on. If you have 7, it can be a little bit easier, but sometimes just having to do that garter stitch tab where it's not really clear where the stitches you need to pick up for that are can be enough to slow me down in starting a shawl. So for this shawl, you can see that there's a little bump there, but really hardly anything. And I could have done it better, but I didn't because I don't really care. When I wear shawls, I often fold over slightly like this to get a little bit of a warmer neck and then wrap it around. So you don't see that little bump anyway. You know? But I do like to have a straight edge on the top. And for this shawl, the way I achieved that, and to continue the garter stitch along the top without doing the garter tab cast on. For this shawl, you cast on 5 stitches. I cast on 5 stitches using the long tail cast on method. And then knit down. Once I had finished the shawl, I went back. And so if you have 5 stitches, if you take stitch number 5 and stitch number 1 and you sew them together, and you take stitch number 4 and stitch number 3 and you sew them together, and stitch number 4 and stitch number 2 and you sew them together, stitch number 3 will just be down here pointing towards your center stitch, and you just basically get a straight edge anyway. So you don't have to fuss with the garter tab cast on. I think I'm going to do that from now on. But of course, you could do this with the garter tab cast on. But if you do have a shawl that calls for that and you're not sure how to do it, or you just don't like doing it, you might give that a try. You can always try to sew in that end after you've just knit a tiny bit of the shawl and see if you like it, and if you don't, rip back, try it a different way. But yeah, I think that's probably how I will do it from now on, or at least until I find another technique that I like. So I think that's about it for this week. I look forward to your responses of the Shetland yarn question on either the episode thread or in the YouTube comments below. And I hope you all have a really great week full of lots of knitting, and hopefully you are having some lovely spring weather. So until next week, happy knitting. Bye!